it's time. We'll begin our scheduled meeting of the Board of Tybee School District number 52 with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, everybody's looked over the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, changes? Comment? Nothing. Okay. The Chair would entertain a approval motion.
I move to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, do we have delegations?
We do. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest Gear Up director here at Coyote Bend City High School. This is April Beshin. And I practiced that a couple times, you heard. April is just going to, being new, I wanted to introduce her to the board, but also she'll just give you a quick update. You're going to get a chance to see an approval on an agenda item, or hopefully an approval. But April's just going to give you a quick rundown of what's going on in Gear Up in Tybee High School.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and having me here tonight. I'm so excited to be a part of Coyote Bend High School. Like, I'm just delighted to be here. In the last couple of months, we've really hit the ground running. Right now, we have 5 trips in the works, which you'll see 1 or 2, maybe 2. Is there 2 on the agenda?
Yes.
Oh, there was 2. I was like, oh, you said 1, but so we've already started after school tutoring. We had a very successful college trip to Eastern Washington University, where one student actually said to me, I didn't know that this was a possibility for me. And the next day he had wrote a full-page essay in his class about how he wants to be the first student in his family, not only to be good at athletics, but to obtain a 4-year degree. So that's just part of what we're doing here. And we've got lots of trips coming up. I'm very excited about the school, very excited about the students. And so I'm here to answer any questions if you want to know more about our program. But I also wanted to invite you all to our parent night this Wednesday. If you want to kind of see what we're doing, we are having a parent night from 6 to 7, where we just hope to engage more with our parents and get to know them so that we can encourage them and give them the tools that they need to be successful with their student at home as well. So
Is that at the high school?
it's at the high school in the library. Yeah.
All
I feel
right.
so official with this right here. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands. No. So any questions or?
Well, April, I'll just share with you, we took a tour, Rick and I, of the high school, and Mr. Henry was just shared a lot about the Gear Up program and how excited he was about the work you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, that means a lot. Like I said, it's been absolutely, I told my husband I don't feel like I'm coming to work when I come to work every day here. So it's been awesome. So thank you for letting me be a part of the school district.
I know my daughter's all excited about doing different things.
Oh, that's so good.
She already said, I'm going to Chile.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
That's great. Did your daughter go on a trip with us?
Mhm.
What was your daughter's name?
Eva. Yep.
She's great. Yeah, okay, I remember now. You gave her some money for the trip.
On the very, yeah, I forgot. I had to turn around and come back.
Now I'm
It
remembering.
might turn out to be a more expensive trip than you thought, Mr.
Right?
Warren.
Yeah.
She's great.
They always are.
Yeah.
She's enjoying it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you all so much. So.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, April.
Thank you.
So I'm good to.
You are welcome
You
to
may
stay,
exit.
but don't feel so like you have to.
There's the recording later if you want to.
Yep.
There you go.
Bye, guys. It was so nice
Bye.
to meet you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, we'll move on to our proposed consent agenda. Any comments or questions, clarifications? You got it laid out pretty good. Well, we'll entertain the motion for approval.
I'll go ahead and move to approve or move for,
Approve the consent.
Move to approve.
Move to approve the consent.
move to approve the agenda.
I guess we've been off a while, right?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimous. Then we'll move on to public comments. Do we have any written? Public comments going once?
It's just like to bring up issues that we have.
If you have something
If
to
you'd
talk
like to
about.
address the board, absolutely.
This
I haven't
is
done this before.
Go on.
This is your chance.
Hi.
Introduce
Hi.
yourself and.
Before I forget, and just make sure before, if you didn't already, to sign in and all that good stuff. But you can do that after.
Okay, perfect. My name is Shannon Whitmore. I'm here today to address an issue of kids at school that are bullying or physical abuse, specifically my grandson who is in kindergarten. And I can't believe this is going on in kindergarten. I know, it blows my mind, but this has been going on for a few months. And it's a specific kid in the classroom, although others are now starting to have the same type of behavior towards other kids in there. I guess, kind of what you see, you learn from. I brought this issue up to Mr. Peterson on March 4th, after there had already been some times of this child punching my grandson, kicking and kneeing him in the private area. By then, I think it was the 4th time of that. And then choking him once in the lunch line. So at this point, that was March 4th that I spoke with you. And I told them, all the information that I had, and that my daughter is a school teacher here. And I came to him because she was kind of conflicted being a parent and a teacher about where can she not cross the line. So, and in all honesty, I mean, her comment to me was, well, Mom, I don't think anything will get done. So I said, let me try to get in here for you. So I talked to him, explained what was going on. He said that he would talk to Mrs. Davis and talk to my daughter with some kind of resolution for what's been going on. Didn't hear back from him for a while, so on March 29th, I went to his office. He was not there at the time, so I spoke with Heidi, which I believe is your sister. Oh, okay. There she is. And told her, that I was very upset because I didn't feel like there was anything getting done about it. I had gotten no updates. After I left, he had called me. We discussed, we kind of need to get this taken care of one way or another. He did speak with my daughter with a resolution. And then I spoke with him on March 30th, just to follow up with him about, kind of the conversation that he had with my daughter. And one of the resolutions that he came up with was for Tyler to be transferred to another classroom.
Tyler's your grandson.
Yes, sorry, Tyler's
Sorry.
my grandson. I act like y'all know. So, where was I? Oh, Okay, so, and I let him know, and Carlina, my daughter, who is the teacher here at the school, also let him know that that was not any kind of way of fixing the problem. The only thing that that would do is end up making Tyler feel like he did something wrong. Putting him in a different classroom, and it's not just my grandson that is dealing with this other child. His name is Malcolm. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. Too late?
Too late.
Too
That's
late.
all right.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I don't know the rules here. Anyway, so, that was on March 30th. April 12th, I ended up calling Mr. Peterson again, to discuss, you know, the meeting that he had with Carlina and what I just said. But I also called him on April 12th because my daughter had called me, and she wanted to call him herself, but she ended up having laryngitis and couldn't really speak. But she was notified that on April 12th, there was another incident where the child was told to go to the end of the line. I don't know if he had gotten into trouble for something, but on his way, he stopped by Tyler and said, "Happy birthday," and then kicked him in the privates. Tyler's birthday had been the day before, and they had a class birthday party. So I let Mr. Peterson know about this incident. At this point, you know, it's kind of frustrating because this has happened so many times. We're just trying to find what needs to be done, what is supposed to be done. I don't know what what the guidelines are for dealing with this kind of an issue, but I just feel like nothing is getting done. I tried calling Mr. Peterson again on April 18th because I had not heard back any resolution. Because at that time, when I told him about the happy birthday incident, he was going to speak with Miss Davis to find out what's been going on in the classroom. And, you know, when you said, you know, things should be addressed right away and reported right away, I believe that, but I kind of need someone to step up and take care of this, not treat it like it's not important. It is important. I mean, my grandson, got slapped in the face by another student today. And he said that his heart was sad because nothing's getting done. I want something done to not just to help my grandson, but to help all these other kids. This is kindergarten. Kindergarten. Can you imagine it starting this early? I mean, what's going to become of this child that has been a problem child in the classroom? Obviously, he needs some kind of help. And that's not for me to decide. That's for the school, his parents, whoever. I'm just speaking about because I also know that there's been other children that have been physically touched by this child in the classroom. And like I said, there's other kids now, and it's hard because sometimes you want to just tell your kid, hey, don't take that, punch him back. We're trying not to do that because that's not a resolution either. That's just teaching him to be mean. So I also know that the kindergarten team has had issues and they are needing support from Mr. Peterson. They're needing aides and a school counselor here to help some of these kids, help some of these families. Since when did we go without having a school counselor? I mean, that's pretty needed. Not all these children are easy to deal with, or, you know, they have issues. Can we not have a counselor at the school?
Okay, well, we appreciate your comment and we'll definitely be discussing it and working on some kind of resolution.
Okay. Let's see. Part of the problem, I believe, is that there's not enough aides like you guys used to
Yeah.
have in the classroom.
We understand that.
There's like one aide for 5 classrooms, and maybe more help in those classrooms will help keep this kind of stuff down. I don't know. That's for you guys to decide, but I want to thank you for your time and listening. I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sharon.
Okay, we will move on to new business. Middle school mascot discussion.
Yeah, as part of our rebranding efforts that the board is well aware of, we've had beginning conversations with all of the buildings about everybody getting on the same page as far as our brand and our information that goes out and all of those types of things. And I just wanted to make the board aware that there is a discussion about not only coming to some agreement across the board as far as letterheads and things like that, but also about our mascots. In fact, the elementary school has gone so far as to say that they would like to also be known as the Bears. And as I explained to Teddy and to Dale, that the pervasive previously, they've been going by the teddy bears for a while. And there has been a strong push to go to bears across the board. And so that's necessitated a conversation at the middle school where we've talked with some staff members, with Mr. Campman. Mr. Campman actually did a student survey last week. Came out about 55% for, 45%, 55% to stay the same, about 45% to change to bears. So I wish in presidential elections that'd be a mandate, and in this kind of scenario, it's not. So we're going to continue to have some ongoing discussions, but there are some real advantages as the board probably understands as we're trying to get everybody on the same page to being able to keep one mascot all the way through. It makes things easier on a lot of different levels, but I'm not asking for a decision. I mainly wanted to make sure that the board is aware this type of discussion is going on. And so if anybody stops you in the market or anything like that, that you know this is happening and these discussions are taking place. And any questions, I'd be happy to there really isn't any sole driver from this other than it's always easier if we were to make a change like this to do it at the same time that we're making changes across the board in our communications and in our letterheads and our different things like that. So.
And given all those raw materials, paper, and estimated financial impact of making a change like that, do we have one?
It surprisingly would save us money. We could put the middle school and the high school in the same athletics rotation, meaning that as we replace a varsity set of gear, for instance, then typically what we would do is move the old varsity stuff to the JV, and then we would be able to continue that and go all the way down into the middle school level so that we wouldn't have to have, for instance, if we were buying new at the varsity, that means that the middle school's getting a new to them set of jerseys in their particular sport.
And we aren't doing that right now? Why did I think we were already doing that?
We aren't doing that right now because all of our middle school stuff says Cubs. All the high school stuff is either Bears or Kybe High School or something to that effect. So with streamline that, one of the things that some students have brought up, which I think is a very valid point, anytime anybody buys anything at the middle school level that says Cubs, it's good for the 2 years, 3 years that they're in the middle school. By going to Bears, we would allow for, obviously, if kids grow, they're going to outgrow their stuff either way, but would allow them to keep their items potentially longer, more years, and not have to replace anything. So as far as an outward cost of district, none.
Yeah, we don't have like thousands of dollars of letterhead that we'd be tossing in the.
No, the way that works right now is our letterhead's all electronic. So once we replace the master, then it's simply on a per print basis. Like I said, informational as much as anything. didn't want the board thinking that somebody was changing mascots without some input or some at least information coming your way.
You're saying the survey indicated that the middle school kids don't want to change.
55-45, I think it was 110 to 88. So that's what the kids, that of the 200 and some kids who took the survey, that's what they said.
Now, when I graduated, which was ancient, but the colors were orange and black and they were the Bears. So then, Teddy, when you graduated, they were orange and black and you were the Cubs,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then I don't know when it turned to blue and white.
In
Probably
several
the,
years. And I guess that's why I thought we were rotating high school
Mhm.
stuff down, because we went blue and white. I thought that was part of the reason we went blue and white at the middle school, so that we could do exactly that.
And it may very well have been discussed at the time. I just know that at this point with the Cubs being on the front of the middle school stuff that we order and not being on the high school stuff, that's not able to happen. So.
I imagine the difference is, my high school was at the middle
Well,
school.
yeah,
And then you guys graduated here. So when they separated the schools, they probably changed the name.
I think that, one thing I've heard is that the middle school staff, well, I don't know, I can't speak for the whole staff, but some, they like the idea of your cub and I'm preparing you to be a bear.
Mhm.
And I don't, I don't know where the staff is as a whole, if they've been surveyed or. But just throwing it out there, not trying to make a decision.
Oh, yeah.
More
And,
info.
and like I said, we're not going to just, tomorrow morning make an announcement and then come heck or high water, we'll move forward with it. But just wanted you to be aware that those conversations are taking place in case you hadn't heard it before.
All right, well. Is there any more discussion? We'll move on to the education program report.
Excellent. And thanks to David, he was able to upload the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint went out to all of you, so you do have it electronically if you'd like to follow along. This is our first attempt to follow the new policy that we have and the new recommended guidance from that policy around having a monthly topic. And the first one that we're going to talk about is our educational programs. And it's going to be fairly 30,000 foot view, meaning not a lot of real specifics, but also an opportunity really to look at the big picture and to see all of the different program funding that we get, programs, what they do, as well as moving forward, what some plans are in the summer, and even some things that we're still in the planning phase of. So the first thing that I want to talk about is our basic education and the idea that all of our students that we have from TK through 12, regardless of anything else, regardless of any other programming, regardless of any other endeavor, the thing that they're a part of, they are considered a basic education student across the board. So all 1,347 students that we currently have on the roster are basic education students first and foremost. And I think that it's important to always go back and focus on that because when we talk about basic ed funding, for instance, we always talk about what our enrollment is and what we get from the state. And we have to acknowledge first and foremost that all of our kids from TK through 12 are considered basic education students. So those numbers are they're the fundamental that drives the district's finances, or the fundamental that drives basically everything we do. As you know from hearing about McCleary over the past, well, quite a few years, it was a lawsuit for 10 years before it finally got fixed. There are things that basic education just doesn't cover. And so when you move though into special programs, and as we're going from bigger down to kind of smaller, one of the first things that comes up is the discussion around title and LAP. And the first thing that you have to do is understand that Title I is a federal program, and it's a huge federal program. It's part of the Basic Education Act, ESSA. It's had a number of acronyms over the years. So Title I, Part A, though, is what we talk about anytime we talk about title or title services. Anytime you hear title, what it's actually referring to is Title I, Part A. This is federally funded. And the easiest way to think about it is that this is a program meant to help all kids, again, grades K through 12, meet their academic standards. And it is by far the biggest chunk of change that the federal government puts out there. Qualifications for that simply are that you're not at grade level. I'm gonna let that sink in for a little bit because, of course, we've always had a large number of title students, a lot of students who qualify for either Title I or the Learning Assistance Program. And I use those two fairly closely because LAP is a state version that does virtually the same thing as title. But as I've said to the board before, and as we've talked about before, almost all of our students are behind right now. So realistically, what we're facing is the idea that we have dedicated funding that is meant for a smaller subset of that population of basic education, but in reality is much wider and broader probably now than it ever has been before. In fact, so much so that even before COVID, K-5, the combined elementary, was all of our title funds are used on a school-wide basis, meaning that there were enough kids qualifying, also enough kids in our higher poverty rates that we could simply say we're going to serve all the students in that school with that particular funding. Right now, between title and LAP, you've got probably between 75 and 80% of our kids K-5 that are getting services, either in math or reading, some sort of an intervention there. And while we focus our title funding at the K-5 level for elementary, LAP is, again, it's a K-12 intervention program, but because there's so much title funding allocated to the K-5 elementary, we then take some of the LAP funding though, and we do address what we refer to as our transition times, especially at the secondary level, meaning our 8th graders who are behind grade level, especially in reading, that's a focus. 8th graders behind in reading before they move to the high school. And then our LAP also funds at the secondary level, our online learning and our credit retrieval, because once you get to high school, as anybody who's gone through high school knows, you really are focusing in on graduation requirements. And so any class you fail is more so than just missing out on the learning, you're also missing out on graduation requirements. So all of our online and our credit retrieval at the high school level is funded by LAP specifically to assist kids who are behind where they should be in terms of graduation. Yes, sir.
Is a title per student that qualifies, or is it a bulk amount, a set amount per year?
No, it is up to students who qualify. And so I think out of 674 total students at the elementary, I want to say 510 were the kids who truly qualified. But because that's such a high number, that's why we can just say it's a school-wide program, because the services are going to be used by a vast majority of the kids.
But we get a set amount.
But yeah, it is determined on a yearly basis.
So what are some of the services that they get through title?
So for instance, our RTI program, so our RTI teachers, our math coach, our RTI paras, all of those folks are funded through title and LAP at the elementary level. At the secondary level, then our online coursework, all of those things are funded by LAP, as well as reading intervention at the middle school. If the board would like at some point to get a more specific breakdown by cost code, we certainly could do that. Like I said, we're really kind of aiming this presentation at a 30,000 foot view, but it'd be very easy to break those out, either Drew or Mona, by federal code for title and then state code for LAP. and see what those specific interventions are. We have, quite frankly, such a wide array, especially at the elementary level, of kids qualifying in different areas. You know, a student, as I'm going to get to, could qualify for bilingual services, but be getting services in a LAP program and also in a title program because they overlap so much, no pun intended.
And so do all of the grade levels K through 5 receive all of the interventions?
They don't, all individual students do not receive all the interventions, but all grade levels have access to the interventions based on the student's need and assessments. So a kid who qualifies in reading at a certain level is going to get priority into the RTI program. And then if they, for instance, don't qualify for individual one-on-one work, they could qualify for a small group approach, could qualify just to be working in a classroom with a designated aide from that area who's either LAP or title funded, where they know who the kids are and then they can work with small groups within the classroom. Like I said, for us, it probably is one of the tougher things because so many of these programs fall across a lot of different, there are kids who are qualified in multiple areas. And that's one of the advantages of going to school-wide though, is because you don't have to then pick and choose, well, this student qualifies here, gets this intervention versus another student qualifying in a different area. Can't have X intervention, but could have Y intervention. So with school-wide, you can mix and match those. So then next is our migrant educational program. And with our students in Benton City, again, pre-K, and please notice the difference on this particular one. I said pre-K because this one goes all the way down to identification, both in transitional kindergarten and ECAP, as well as flowing over into the Carousel program, which is an ECAP site that is not run through Tybee Schools, it's run through the ESD. And these are the qualifying factors. So whenever you see that we have students who qualify for migrant support, you can go down this list. Child is not older than 21. They're entitled to a free public education. Everything there applies to everyone. Child is not yet at grade level. So here's where the first part of our migrant qualification tends to overlap with some of our title. The important thing is that the child made a qualifying move in the preceding 36 months as a migratory ag worker or migratory fisher, or to join a parent, guardian, or spouse in those industries. So again, you have all the other qualifiers, then you have the big one, which of course says that the student is a family member of someone who within the last 3 years has moved specifically for economic impact due to working conditions. And then moved from one school district to another. In a state that's comprised of a single school district, it's moved from one administrative area. That doesn't apply to us. Neither does the second one. So really what you're looking at is a kid qualifies for migrant services who has moved for economic purposes in agriculture or the fishery industry, last 36 months, a low grade level, and we kind of tie all of that together. So again, if you're a migrant student being served in the K-5, you could, for instance, be getting some of the same services as a student who qualifies under title or LAP, but because the services overflow because they're school-wide, they can be getting the same ones without us worrying about mixing those interventions. It's really when you go into later grades into the secondary level that you start hitting much more specific migrant education programming that are specific to migrants. So if you think about our high school programming, for instance, a student who qualifies as a migrant student has access then to the PASS program, which is a packet-based credit accrual program that we have a lot of students who go through that program as well. And there you will see that it interacts completely with our bilingual education program, our transitional bilingual program, which is for all intents and purposes, our English language development program. So again, you can see the overlap and the merging of several of our programs because we have many of our migrant students, the 263 that qualify under migrant, many of those also qualify under the 347 that we have qualified under bilingual services. The biggest difference that you see when you get into our bilingual educational program is that we're required by the state to assess those students in their English ability on an annual basis. So while we currently are serving 300 and we had 347 on the books, I want to say it's 68 of those kids have actually been exited because of their English proficiency. So you could be in a situation where you have a migrant student who has exited a bilingual program, but is still eligible for their migrant support. And that is where you get some of our staff members at the high school have such good relationships with the kids. They're able to move to kind of weave that across the line because you have a kid who maybe no longer qualifies in English language learner classes, ELL classes. So they're in a regular ed English class. However, they're still getting support from their former ELL teacher in the form of a migrant support program.
So whose job is it to track all this data?
So all of the, great question. All of the federal programs and that I talked about at the beginning, the title LAP, those are all covered through Mr. Hahn in his jurisdiction. Then you have migrant and bilingual, being that they're so closely tied to ELL, those are Diane Zavala's area.
So they have people that individually identify each student. And
Correct.
watch and see if they're ready to exit or they have, it's been 3 years since they moved here or whatever.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that is a requirement of our migrant education program, and if you ever come in when school is in session, we have a migrant coordinator who works here in the district office. Her entire job is to qualify and talk to parents of kids who qualify, and then to do any double checking to see if we have a kid or a family that just is barely not qualifying or barely qualifying, that they are in constant conversation with them so that if they ever do fully qualify, we can get them services we need, or if they exit, then we're ready to hand them off to support. Because like I said, especially in our younger grades, even though they may no longer qualify for migrant services or bilingual services, they may still be below grade level and qualify for a title or a LAP support. So yes, there are a lot of people keeping their fingers on all of our kids served by these special programs to make sure that we're giving them each the opportunities that they need and the opportunities that they qualify for. And then finally, we move into our highly capable, which is the smallest of the subgroups that we're going to talk about tonight, our HiCap program, as it's commonly known. Again, I feel the need to focus. This is a part of basic ed. Even though a part of our federal funding can be earmarked for specific HiCap purposes. So we currently have 41 students that are identified as HiCap, and the way that we do that is through teacher recommendation, parent recommendation, and then we have a HiCap assessment that we give. That's a standard assessment used. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 290 of the 295 districts that we have in the state. You're given a screener test, assuming that you do well on that, you're given the full battery. Once that happens, once we determine a kid is eligible, then Debbie Alexander as the elementary/middle school librarian is able to provide services for HiCap through a pull-out model, through a rotation model. Ideally, at some point, we get to the point where, much like we've integrated our other program features into a school-wide type model, eventually that's something that I think could go down that road as well, because many of the standards and expectations that we have of HiCap kids, they're not the only ones that may be able to have a positive outcome from that. So other districts, as they identify more and more students, as you kind of widen the scope of what you're looking for, you can see then the necessity could be that we start integrating that into the regular classroom as well, as opposed to simply a pullout with more opportunities. Next is where we go into special programs. This is all of our students who are identified through our special education program. They're identified through a diagnosed or suspected learning disability. And I want to be very specific about this because we know that a student who is diagnosed with a learning disability qualifies for an individualized education plan. But it should be noted that once we suspect that there's a disability, we start treating them as a student in need of services through an IEP. So even and as anyone who's tried to go to any doctor recently or trying to get any medical evaluation, there's some time involved in that process. So once we make a recommendation to even evaluate a student, we consider them to be served by an IEP and eligible for services. If it turns out 2-3 months down the road that no, the student didn't qualify, we can deal with that. We have other options, our title or LAP, depending on the kid's academic skills, a program or an identifier called 504 under Section 504 of the Individual Disability Education Act. We can try and support a kid through those means as opposed to a very specific and identifiable learning disability or IEP. Currently, we have 193 students identified in KIB. And I always feel the need to come back to this because this is one of those things that you have to always reinforce is they are considered basic education first. So they have the same rights regardless of their learning disability or learning issues. They have the same rights as any other kid in our district. Okay. And then finally, I touched on this a little bit earlier, our credit retrieval program, LAP funded, the Apex Online Credit Accrual Program. Just in case anyone's wondering, the Apex Online program is an OSPI accredited curriculum. It is an approved, so every curriculum that it offers, that we offer as credit retrieval has been approved through OSPI. And they are a third-party provider, meaning that we contract to provide those services through Apex. And one of the things we do is we provide the teacher, in this case, Mr. Burke and Ms. Gray, who's the paraprofessional that goes into that program. And then both of those are supported through LAP dollars.
Does the school get paid fully for those students, even if they're on the Apex program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is an alternative learning program, but right now, most kids who take the program are not independent of KIB High School in general. So they, for the most part, are taking 4, 5, 6 other classes and their credit retrieval at the same time. During COVID, we did have some kids who were Apex only. And then it's just a different mechanism to ensure that they're meeting the same standards for hours met and things like that, so that they do count the same as any other kid who's attending in person. Okay, then summer program. I've talked to you about summer program before, but I just felt the need to go ahead and put it in here. K-5 open to any kid, 6 through 8 open to any student with focus on students below grade level or with special needs. And then at 9-12, as the board is aware, we take a pretty good shift because we're really not focused as much as on seat time or social interaction. We're focusing in on getting the kids meeting standard, getting them the credit to meet towards graduation. And then finally, to wrap up, just because it's out there, this is one of the programs I talked about earlier that we're going to be trying out this year. We're going to be offering, assuming everything lines up, we're going to be offering a summer athletic training program for all kids grades 4 through 12. That's next year's 4 through 12. So current 3rd through 11th. We're really trying to get kids involved. This ties into the social emotional learning and the connection to school. And it's really just an opportunity for, let's say, the kid who is average or above average, doesn't want to come to regular summer school, but wants to be a part of an athletics program. This is not a team-specific program. This is strictly a health and conditioning program. So some kids who qualify and maybe are going for the academics first thing in the morning, they may still be able to go to their basketball camps, go to their football camps, or go through their athletic training program at a different time. But it's really just a way free of charge to get kids involved in some type of summer activity. We know that when kids are more involved and have more buy-in to what school is offering, that they're going to do better academically. So we see this as a good tie into that. And it falls under our programming as the rest of summer athletics does, just like football camp or a basketball camp. It's just that this one's going to be 7 weeks long and go for 4 days a week throughout the majority of the summer. So really just a chance to grab a kid and hopefully keep a hold of them. All of that will be tied in obviously with our summer lunch and our summer breakfast program. So any kid under the age of 21 in the district that resides here can come in and get a free breakfast and free lunch.
So who's funding the athletics? Is that a grant or is that coming out of our basic ed?
So right now we're looking at we've gotten some quotes for different opportunities to partner with, we've got one local in town that has given us a quote. And then I've asked Lance to come up with like to say it's the Honda Civic on one end and the Cadillac on the other. Give me 2 or 3 good in-betweens to see what we can do, this bare bones versus the Cadillac model. He and Mr. Campman are both doing a state athletics director meeting currently, but we should have everything ready to submit to Clear Risk for approval from a registration and participation side end of next week. So hopefully by the next meeting on the 9th, we'll be able to tell you exactly what funding we're using, where it's going to be coming from. We're really looking at an overall program cost of anywhere between $3,000 on the low end, $10,000 on the high end. If we're able to fund summer school with some bilingual migrant title, LAP, some of our program dollars, then we could open up some basic ed and some ESSER dollars to go ahead and fund that as a part of the social and emotional learning aspect of bringing kids back into the fold, so to speak.
Okay.
And as I've said to the board, as we talked about, this is really a very, very big overview. If you can think of any specific questions where we need to dive deeper on any of these topics and any of these topics as we go from month to month, of course, we're fortunate we have another board meeting, a majority of we have 2 in each month. So if we do want to go get something that's a little more deep in one specific area, we can certainly do that by calling the district administrators, the building administrators who are responsible, and having them give you some more details, okay?
Pete, I would like to dive a little bit more into those Title I interventions,
Okay.
K-5, and I would really like to see like a list of them.
Okay.
And then like per grade level, maybe how many kids are being serviced.
Okay.
If you could, that would be great.
Absolutely. So K-5 intervention
And then like a grade level list.
per grade level. But I'm also going to guess per subject area too, because obviously we've got some kids getting served in math, some in ELA, some in both.
Sounds good.
ELA, both. Very good. And unless there are any further questions, that's all I've got for you this evening on the educational program side.
Anything else?
No, thank you, appreciate that.
All right. Okay, then we'll move on to the out-of-state travel.
And quite frankly, this is what April was referring to when she came in earlier. One of the things that I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Clay reinforced with Rick and Julie when they met. April's a go-getter, and we have had to struggle to get some of our out-of-school campus visits, and she's hit the ground running, and you can see the out-of-district approval is for one college visit, and then one visit down to OMSI, down in Portland. The great part about having someone who's as active as April is when they're able to share with other Gear Up programs. So while we may not have enough kids to justify a bus to Eastern Oregon or a bus to Portland, they can work with the other Gear Up programs in Burbank and Connell and Findlay as examples, coordinate their efforts. Once they get enough kids, then they can justify chartering a bus or getting a school bus, but filling it up. We don't want to send anybody to Portland with a school bus and 8 kids. So she's really doing an outstanding job. And these are the first two, because they're out of state, it's the reason that they're on the board agenda and why we asked you to approve them. But I would not doubt for an instance that this may not even be the last this year, much less more for the future coming in.
So we're-
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, we're going to LeGrand into Portland.
Eastern Oregon and OMSI.
Was there an estimated cost associated with that? I didn't see it on there.
Not a cost to the district.
Okay.
It's covered through the Gear Up grant. So they're covering the cost and all of the good stuff. Unless Dale wants to send money with Eva already.
You'll want to stop somewhere. So AA went out of business. I didn't know that. We used to use them all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know they had an issue. So we probably reorganized.
I would imagine that if you think about all the companies impacted by COVID,
Mhm.
a charter bus service had to be a private,
Right up there, yeah.
right up there.
Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just ready to move to approve it, but then I didn't, I jumped the
Yeah, no,
gun.
no, I was blabbing on for nothing.
So I moved to approve the out-of-state travel for the Gear Up program.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion, are moved and approved, or moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now let's move and approved. Okay, we'll go into board comments.
I'll just say that I really enjoyed my tour through the high school. Saw a lot of great programs, saw podcasts being made. It was really fun. And I did have one just comment on the vouchers. I did see some purchases from Amazon that I thought could have gone through KCBA. And so if we could, I don't know if there's a way to make that more, I know Amazon's so convenient, but KCBA saves us some money. Is that correct?
Certainly can. And I would just, I tell you what, I'll save that for my superintendent's report. I
Okay,
don't want to interject, I want to keep.
that's right, or comment. That's my
Yep.
comment.
I was gonna speak up on behalf of the kindergartens. And I know, kindergartners coming in, they've had 2 years of COVID. To them, it's the whole world. To us, it's not much, but I can see where, once they get to school and a structure that they haven't had for a couple of years, that there could be some unruly kids and we probably do owe the kindergartner teachers more support. And I know, we're having trouble getting parents to sign up, but I guess my suggestion would be maybe we can target a job title that says kindergarten para, so that people would be interested in, they might not want to be a para where they don't know what they're going to end up doing, but they might be interested in working with kindergartners, somebody in particular. So if we've got the money to hire somebody, which we seem to have some open jobs, We could just, do something to help the kindergarten. I know this lady's complaint isn't the only one. And a lot of it has to do with bullying. I guess I have one more opinion too that I could throw out there that I've had for a long time. A lot of bullying comes, from being on the recess grounds. And I know we're like the only school district where the teachers don't go out and supervise their kids. And kids, these tend to have a lot more respect for their teachers than they do the paras because they don't interact with the paras. So I think a lot of bullying could be, could subside if the teachers actually spent time on the recess grounds. And I know that's a sacred cow for our union, but I still think it contributes a little bit to some of the bullying. So anyway, okay. I'm done.
I did have one. I know there was a middle school choir concert, may have been band and choir, but somehow I didn't have my computer because Heidi sent me a message, but I don't get on when my computer's on her desk. But I saw nothing until the day of the event. So I don't know. I assume that's on those teachers mostly, but I would love to get that stuff out there publicly because I would have loved to have gone. But by the time I knew about it, it was 30 minutes into it. It seemed a little rude to walk in the middle. So
Yeah, it makes it difficult when we do so much communication by email if you don't have access to your email. Because it was one of the items that I had sent out.
yes, I saw that.
My update, but again, it's kind of like a cell phone. If you're calling me on my other cell phone that I no longer have, then I completely understand it. So
But I don't.
I would say though that I know at least from our event calendars and the ways that we typically do get information out, that both Mr. Kelly and the gentleman that I always get who has two first names and I always get them backwards. Yes, I know that they got the information out. I'll follow up and see where it went on social media, but they were being pretty active about it. But again, if you don't have the access, then you probably missed 90% of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have access at my home and I don't recall seeing it on
Okay.
the school district site.
Yep.
So. But I heard it was wonderful, just saying,
Yep.
which is great. Oh, hang on, I had one more on that note.
Okay.
The color guard thing, is that like
Yes.
for color guard? Like, are you gonna touch on that later?
I'll touch on that
Okay,
when I get
I
to my
will
report.
wait.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report, and touch on those things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. So in reverse order, the color guard is exactly what it seems to be. This was
Sorry, my bad.
this was an effort on our music teachers to try, I think one of the things that, especially in athletics, that we tend to do is we try and get kids out for things that they're interested in, watching the varsity football game, doing those types of things. This is their attempt. This is a music related type of a program, and we haven't had a significant enough amount of interest in a color guard to have a successful program when we've gotten to the high school. So this is really their first shot at, can we try and ingrain a sense that if we get enough kids interested, by the time they get to high school, we can have one.
We did have one when we had marching band. Just so-
So, I gotta say, as a part of my report, just in general, I was fortunate enough, I stuck my head in the middle school band program at the end of the week. And I can tell you, having done the same thing a couple weeks into school, there's probably more growth there than I've seen in a long time. Both Mr. Kelly and Mr. Duncan are doing great stuff. So the opportunities to there, did I get backwards again?
Mhm, all right.
The kids are doing great. I mean, again, used to going in there, not seeing many kids, 26 kids, all of them playing, and playing well. I mean, this isn't as simple as just throwing out instruments and trying to see what kind of sounds they can make. They're doing a good job. Going back to our question about Amazon, I would love it, Julie, if you could email Mona and I any of the specific items you were looking at, because one of the things we do is, yes, we push out KCDA as usually the most inexpensive. The other thing though we do is for anyone who is purchasing on Amazon, the district has an Amazon account. So that you can't just go buy things on Amazon and then get reimbursed for whatever the heck it was. So anything you see there, if you get it to Mona, she'll be able to do a little research and say, okay, this is why it was purchased that way. Or either it should have been done a different way, or no, this was actually the most appropriate way. Just a couple items. So kind of reverse order again, I'm going to be attending the elementary staff meeting on Wednesday. With the purpose behind it, quite frankly, is to try and address with the full staff some of the issues that were brought up tonight. What our outlook is for an elementary counselor and a return to that. Drew is currently working on trying to get down to the bottom dollars and cents of what our allocation for small school counselors from last year's legislative meeting and then this year's social emotional learning as it relates to social workers, nurses, counselors, all that stuff. I asked Drew to come up and quite frankly, just add everything up and call who he needs to call, give me a bottom dollar so that I can give that to the board and assure them that if we're going to go ahead and post for the position, that we have a vast majority of that funding already taken care of through the legislative process. If they give us $5,000 to go out and hire a counselor, it doesn't go very far. But if they've gotten us 90% of the way there through additional funding, then by all means, we're ready to go. Okay. So when Drew finds that information out, he'll be able to relay that back to me and to the board as well. Last thing really that I have, we are looking at some options for our 21st century grant. The reason I bring that up is because this year we are at the end of the 5-year grant cycle that was what brought 21st century here. We've had very good success with it. We've got 68 kids who are currently participating in after-school programming until 5 o'clock. We're going to carry that over into the summer. They have the funding to be able to do that. So we're going to offer a summer science as a part of our rotation at the elementary level. The question mark comes in that we have two options. We can wait and hope that we get earmarked for a 1-year extension, which would then take us through to the next 5-year grant cycle. Those grants are overseen through the ESD. And so we don't have a lot to do with it other than assurances from us in the ESD that we're going to be nice and play along with them. They're going to support us with staffing models and opportunities. We don't find out if we get the grant extension though until July. And quite frankly, by that time, if we don't get it, it may very well be too late for us to try and put a program into place. So by the end of this week, everything else being equal, Mr. Castillo, Mr. Hahn, and I are going to get together and determine whether or not we want to try to apply for the next 5-year grant on our own, starting for this coming next year. There are some, I'm about 50-50 as to whether or not it's a great thing for the district or something to get us by, because that would mean we do all of the hiring at that point. But it would also mean that the percentage that the ESD takes off the top for administrative services and those types of things would not be taken off. Those would come to the district. So one of the other things that I've asked Drew to do, quite frankly, is to work with Bernardo and find out exactly what the costs would be if A, we were to assume those ourselves, but then B, what if we were of the mindset that we could get away with simply self-funding if the grant doesn't get extended? What would be the district cost to basically pay our own 21st century, pay the same people, what's the same dollar figure to keep that program from having that gap year? Because that gap year is really what we want to avoid. When you have 70 kids who are used to a certain thing happening a certain way, you'd like to keep them engaged all the way through. So again, this will be a point, or this will be an item that we come back to the board with and say, this is our best recommendation for how we continue this programming.
So
Okay.
are we at risk? Maybe angering the ESD, or is it a better chance of success if the ESD applies for the grant versus if we do? Is there pros and cons?
There are pros and cons to it. The biggest thing for me is I would be fairly okay if the dollar figure comes out to be not so astronomical that would put pressure on other programs that, let's say we didn't get the extension next year, we find out late July that we didn't get the extension, and then we self-fund for a year before the ESD picks it back up. But that's really going to depend on what Bernardo and Drew can find out as far as what the true costs are going to be. Like Gear Up, when we're talking about multiple sites, the ESD has multiple sites for 21st century. So they can have one person who oversees the site coordinators at 3 or 4 different places. So we'd have to find someone to assume the duty of the grant overseer and then try and get our current site coordinator to come and work for us in the same role. And there's some HR and some personnel things associated with that that aren't necessarily the best option. Bottom line is we're trying to get as much information as we can before we make a decision. The bottom line for me is we've got a program that's good for kids and we want to figure out the best way we can continue it without having that gap year.
The ESD hasn't given us any hint though.
The ESD is simply a matter of, they know they have to be writing a new grant, but it's not until the next year following this one. So they were able to apply for the extension for their sites. It's just, we're not going to know mid-July, late July, whether or not we got the extension.
And if we don't, they're not gonna help us out.
If we don't, they have no income coming in. That means they have no payroll going out for any of the people that have been assuming those roles here. Which is why I asked Drew to work with Bernardo and get us a cost.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Anything else? Okay, well then, we will go into an executive session for 30 minutes, it looks like. And pursuant to RCW 42-30-110, and no business to follow, we'll adjourn after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Drew, will you hang with us for